In this world, every individual can align with a race of their own and ascend to godhood. Under my command, I possess a vast army of the insect race, numbering in the millions. Yet my classmates mock me, labeling me a useless good-for-nothing fool. They do so simply because the race I belong to is considered the lowliest of trash. The great yellow locusts, aside from reproducing faster than swine, they serve no purpose. Meanwhile, others command the likes of the thunderhordes or the soaring cavalry. Even the least fortunate among them leads a goblin army. Just as I believed I would never rise above my station, I was stunned to discover I possessed a unique talent, the cord of sacrificial life. This talent allows for the sacrifice of living beings in exchange for treasures of equivalent value. That moment, a daring ambition took root in my mind. Would the terrifying reproductive rate of the yellow locusts, combined with life sacrifice, not allow my status to soar to the heavens? With that thought, I immediately began a frenzied expansion of my forces, working day and night. I expended 200,000 points of faith power to activate the growth acceleration talent. Within a mere 14 days, I had manifested 20 million yellow locusts. Half of them successfully reached maturity and produced over 50 million eggs. Simultaneously, as the number of yellow locusts swelled, my faith power surged alongside them. I continued to pour every drop of that faith power into accelerating their growth. Before long, the number of mature yellow locusts reached a staggering 2.4 billion. Seeing this, I finally activated the life sacrifice. Instantly, a colossal blood-red formation manifested above my divine realm. Preserving only 10 million mature insects to ensure the survival of the race, I sacrificed the remaining 2.4 billion yellow locusts. Countless threads of minute life energy were drawn upward, disappearing into the formation. As the ritual concluded, 3 choices materialized before me. These were the rewards reaped from the sacrifice. Option 1, 1,000 elite life form warriors. Option 2, the fountain of life, capable of continuously producing life-spring water to nourish existence and terraform the surrounding environment. Option 3, a Tier 1 heart of detonation. Once integrated into the core of the divine realm, it grants a certain probability of producing essence that contains explosive power. Without hesitation, I chose the third option. In an instant, a surge of explosive energy spread through the bodies of my core race. Among the 10 million remaining yellow locusts, a portion of them began to develop patterns on their bodies glowing as fiery red as a blaze. Their physical size also doubled in scale. I seized one of these self-detonating locusts and commanded it to explode. While the explosion's force was comparable to a large firecracker, such power was far from enough to kill even an ordinary dwarf. Perhaps overwhelming them with sheer numbers is the only way to succeed. Less than 8 hours remain before class begins, which translates to nearly 4 months in the time of the divine realm. Thus, I once again channeled energy to accelerate the growth and breeding of my self-detonating locusts. The blink of an eye, 4 months passed within the divine realm. At that same moment, as the school bell rang, I was instantly teleported to my seat in the classroom. Inside, my classmates were laughing and chatting, exchanging news about the state of their respective divine realms. Suddenly, a graceful figure approached me. This girl was named Qin Shuang. She stood before me with her hands on her hips. With an air of arrogance, she asked, "General Bai, have you reached a decision? Become my servant, and I guarantee that no one will dare to bully you until we graduate." Hearing this, I flatly refused, but at that exact moment, 3 male students entered the classroom. Their leader was none other than Zhang Bin, a pathetic fool who frequently tormented me. "General Bai, have you prepared the 100 points of divine power I ordered you to bring? Hand it over now. Don't force our hand, or we will shatter your divine realm's core, ensuring you never rise again." I looked up at the 3 of them. "If it's divine power you want, I have none. I have but 1 life. Do you have the nerve to take it?" These words left Zhang Bin in utter shock. In the past, I had always endured their bullying in silence. Why was I being so defiant today? Rage suddenly surged within Zhang Bin. "It seems you truly are tired of living. Do you believe me when I say I'll lead my army of dwarves to lay waste to your divine realm? I will crush your divine realm's core into dust." Despite Zhang Bin's threats, I did not flinch, telling him to strike if he truly had the capability. Provoked to anger, Zhang Bin immediately activated an invasion card against me. Instantly, the card transformed into a beam of light that enveloped my body. Subsequently, my consciousness was forcibly pulled into my own divine realm. Once an invasion card locks onto its target, it creates a spatial portal within the opponent's divine realm. This is the mechanism used to conduct invasions between gods. Within the desolate desert region of my divine realm, a massive teleportation gate began to manifest. From within the portal, an entire legion of dwarves marched forth. Zhang Bin hovered in the air, looking down upon his dwarven army. He let out a roar. "In the name of the god of dwarves, I command you. My dwarven legion, go forth and annihilate those pathetic locusts. Destroy the core of this divine realm." Encouraged by Zhang Bin, the morale of the dwarf legion soared to its absolute peak. At this moment, the other students began using their god realm login devices to enter spectator mode. Look there. Leading the dwarf legion is an elite creature. He has actually managed to birth an elite life form. This time, President Bai is surely finished. The opinions of the students were almost entirely one-sided. Not a single person favored me. Meanwhile, my divine avatar hovered in the sky while a massive swarm of locusts circled below. After 4 months of nurturing, the locusts had already produced 2 generations. The number of ordinary locusts alone had reached over 90 million. Furthermore, there were over 200,000 self-detonating locusts, all belonging to the elite lifeform class. Witnessing the Dwarf Legion charging forward, I issued the command for the self-detonating locusts to strike. Instantly, the self-detonating locusts surged out from the ordinary swarm, congregating into a brilliant crimson cloud. The spectating students cried out in shock, "Look! What are those red flying insects?" Before Zhang Bin could even issue an order, the self-detonating locusts rained down upon them. In an instant, the sound of continuous explosions filled the air as thick clouds of dust rose everywhere. Once the dust settled, the scene before them left the spectating students paralyzed with fear. 5,000 dwarves were killed instantly by the blasts, and more than half of the survivors were severely wounded. Although the elite dwarf leader still possessed some fighting strength, there were still over 50,000 self-detonating locusts hovering in the sky. Seeing this, Zhang Bin hastily issued a divine decree, commanding the surviving dwarves to retreat to his god realm immediately. But how could I possibly let Zhang Bin escape? Relying on the locust's natural instinct for flight, I ordered my locusts to surge through the teleportation gate and invade Zhang Bin's god realm in a counter-offensive. Over 90 million ordinary locusts, resembling a black storm, immediately plunged into the teleportation gate, violently ravaging everything in sight within Zhang Bin's god realm. Wherever the locusts passed, not a single blade of grass remained. His heart bleeding with agony, Zhang Bin roared at me, "Hurry up and order your subordinates to get out of my god realm." But I paid absolutely no heed to his roars. Instead, I commanded the self-detonating locusts to deliver the finishing blows to the dwarves who were clinging to life. Panic-stricken, Zhang Bin shouted, "I admit defeat! Withdraw your locusts from my realm and let my subjects return." I merely responded with a cold sneer. "Since that is the case, it is only natural that I shatter your divine core in return." Zhang Bin roared in fury, "How dare you! If you truly go through with this, my parents will never forgive you. My father is a demigod, and my mother is on the verge of ascending as well. You are absolutely no match for them." At that moment, my cold sneer deepened as I replied, "As if they would show me mercy even if I were to spare you now." I then issued a divine decree to my locust followers, ordering them to crush his core regardless of the cost. Immediately, a massive swarm locust lunged forward to assault the divine core. They did not hesitate, even if it meant certain death upon impact. This display of resolve left Zhang Bin paralyzed with terror. Should his divine core be destroyed, he would be forever barred from ascending to the rank of demigod. He would be unable to nurture followers, relegated to being a mere divine creature for the rest of his life. He would never have the chance to rise again. At that critical moment, the avatar of a demigod suddenly manifested above the divine realm. It was none other than the homeroom teacher Lu Luotian. Stay your hand. You have already won. There is no need to drive him to such extremes." A glimmer of hope surfaced on Zhang Bin's face. After all, as long as his divine core remained intact, he could restore his divine realm and seek vengeance in the future. However, I paid no heed to the teacher's command. Instead, I allowed the locusts to continue their assault on Zhang Bin's divine core, while simultaneously questioning the homeroom teacher. "When I was being beaten by Zhang Bin, when I was being extorted and bullied, why did you never appear? Did you think I was so easily trampled upon?" Hearing this, Lulu Ocean's expression turned grim. Although he was well aware that I was constantly bullied, he had chosen not to interfere. Since I was an orphan without any background, there was no profit in helping me. But because Zhang Bin's father was a demigod and his mother was nearing ascension, Lulu Ocean naturally knew which side he should favor. "Cease your actions first. I will explain this matter to you in detail." Upon hearing those words, I sneered. "If it were my divine core being attacked today, would you have stepped in to stop it?" I then commanded the locusts to intensify their attack. As the sound of the core shattering echoed, Zhang Bin's divine realm instantly collapsed into countless fragments. His face turned deathly pale as he slumped to the ground, his divine realm lost forever. For the rest of his life, he will never ascend to the rank of a demigod. He is destined to remain a talentless waste forever. After gathering the fragments, I immediately left school and returned home. Although I emerged victorious in this battle, I know that Zhang Bin's demigod father will likely seek retribution. When that time comes, the school, buckling under the pressure of a demigod, will undoubtedly hand me over to Zhang Bin's father. Therefore, I must seize every moment to increase my strength. Immediately I retrieved the fragments from Zhang Bin's shattered divine realm, fusing them into my own divine realm core. Instantly, the area of my divine realm expanded to 260 square kilometers, and the divine realm core ascended to level 2. Furthermore, I plundered his level 1 sacred relic, the Dwarven Hammer. However, this item is only effective for a Dwarven Legion. Thus, I logged into the divine trading platform to exchange it for a sacred relic that would benefit me. Before listing the Dwarven Hammer, I left a specific note requesting a sacred relic related to explosive power. Not long after, I successfully traded for a level 1 resource called Magma Sparks. Its effect enhances the fire resistance of my subordinates and significantly increases their explosive power. The moment I infused the Magma Sparks into the Divine Realm Core, a surge of flame energy instantly enveloped the bodies of all my locusts. Following this, 1 in every 1,000 locusts underwent a mutation. The ordinary locusts that mutated saw a vast increase in their resistance to high temperatures. As for the self-detonating locusts, they evolved directly into magma burst locusts. Not only was their explosive power comparable to a grenade, but the resulting magma splatter also inflicted devastating area of effect damage. Witnessing this, I immediately resolved to amass a massive army. If I can produce 10 million magma burst locusts, I'll be able to walk through this entire academy completely unopposed. Simultaneously, within the school's academic affairs office, Zhang Bin's father, Zhang Gang, spoke out in a fit of rage. My son's divine realm core has been shattered. It is beyond restoration. Today, the school must provide me with a satisfactory explanation. The Dean of Academic Affairs, Hua Mai, attempted to explain the situation. From what we have gathered, this invasion was instigated by your son, Zhang Bin. Furthermore, student Zhang Bin has a long history of documented bullying against his peers. Upon hearing this, Zhang Gang stood up abruptly, and the overwhelming aura of a demigod erupted from his body. And what of it? Are you implying that my son's shattered core is entirely his own fault, and that the school bears no responsibility whatsoever? Although Hua Mai was also a demigod, her cultivation path focused on logistical support. In terms of sheer presence, she fell far short of Zhang Gang. Mr. Zhang, that is not what I meant. Regarding the incident where student Zhang Bin's god domain core was shattered, the Zhang family has decided to offer 100 million points of divine power as compensation. However, despite the offer of compensation, Zhang Gang remained dissatisfied. Regardless, that brat must be expelled immediately. Hua Mai frowned. Had this demand been made before she witnessed myself detonating locusts, she would have undoubtedly expelled me without a second thought. But now my achievements had spread throughout the entire grade, leading most teachers to view me as a talent worth cultivating. After a few moments of deliberation, Hua Mai replied with unwavering resolve, I cannot grant your request. Upon hearing this, Zhang Gang was forced to concede slightly, stating, Dean Hua, I can accept the school's decision to forego severe punishment, but as the aggrieved party, I must have my retribution. I shall dispatch a 1,000-man squad to invade his god domain. Regardless of the outcome, we will consider the matter settled. If you cannot agree to even this minor request, then do not blame me for disregarding the school's prestige and taking matters into my own hands. Though a 1,000-man squad might sound insignificant, this was a force belonging to a demigod. Its prowess was far beyond anything a novice like Zhang Bin, who had only recently awakened his god domain, could ever hope to match. Seeing Zhang Gang's unwavering resolve, Hua Mai was left with no choice but to agree. Meanwhile, after multiple applications of my growth acceleration energy, the number of locusts within my god domain had reached a staggering 4.8 billion, with nearly 10 billion more eggs waiting to hatch. Just as I was about to perform another life sacrifice, a communication request from Dean Hua Mai appeared. Following a brief exchange, I gained a general understanding of the situation and began accelerating my preparations for the coming battle. I immediately initiated the second life sacrifice. In an instant, a massive blood-colored formation manifested as 4.8 billion ordinary locusts were converted into life energy surging into the array. Soon 3 options appeared before me. Option 1, creature, the blood-eyed demonic child. This choice offered a chance to produce core subordinates possessing the blood-eye trait. These blood eyes significantly enhance the host's dynamic vision, and upon the sight of blood, they trigger a primary berserk state. Option 2, the Tier 1 skill Refined Fireball, allowing core subordinates to match. Option 3, the Slasher Blade Peak, a member of the Blade Peak race, a hero tier lifeform. The first 2 options were certainly impressive, but considering tomorrow's battle against a 1,000-man legion of demigod rank, relying solely on those weak locusts would surely lead to disaster. Thus, I chose the third option, the Slasher Blade Peak. However, upon examining its basic attributes, I was stunned by the sheer power of this hero tier being. It possessed 4 distinct skills, one of which was a self-created technique, a feat of comprehension so profound that even the godhood login device could not fathom its depth. The Slasher Blade Peak possessed a humanoid form, its slender frame complemented by deathly pale white hair. Its most striking feature, however, was its 2 pairs of arms. Sensing my gaze, the Slasher Blade Peak immediately offered the plea, "O great deity, I require a blade. The Blade Peak race was born for battle. To be without a sword is like a soldier without ammunition." I nodded and immediately spent my final 50 points of divine power to purchase a great sword of storms for it. Upon receiving the weapon, the Slasher Blade Peak excitedly swung it twice, instantly summoning fierce gales of sword wind. Yet it then made another request. "Great deity, I require 3 more weapons of the same caliber to unleash my full potential." I stood there frozen. Did it think my divine power was harvested from thin air? Did it believe such things could be conjured at a mere whim? Nevertheless, considering the upcoming confrontation with Zhang Gang, maximizing the strength of the Slasher Blade Peak was of paramount importance. However, given my current reputation among my classmates, I feared no one would be willing to lend me the necessary resources. Driven to desperation, I had no choice but to call Qin Shuang, a girl I had saved back in our primary school days. Since then, she had always kept an eye on me, even intervening whenever I was being bullied. Yet her haughty and arrogant attitude was truly difficult to bear. At that moment, Qin Shuang saw my call and felt a mix of joy and apprehension. "Have you changed your mind?" she asked. "Have you finally agreed to become my servant?" Utterly speechless, I replied, "No, I am only calling to borrow some divine power." Tan Shuang sneered and asked, "You wish to borrow my divine power? Then tell me, what do you have to offer as collateral? Those trash followers of yours?" I remained silent for 3 seconds before asking, "Are you going to lend it or not?" "How much do you need?" "Send me your account details." With a cold snort, Tan Shuang abruptly ended the call. Tan felt as though she could slap herself for her own sharp tongue. Why did those mocking words escape her so naturally? At this moment, Tan Shuang was consumed by guilt. Meanwhile, after receiving 150 points of divine power, I immediately purchased 3 storm greatswords and bestowed them upon the slashing metal sword peak. In an instant, their faith in me surged, elevating them to the rank of true believers. The following day, I was teleported directly to the school classroom. There Zhang Bin and his father Zhang Gang had been waiting for a long time. Once the teacher confirmed both parties were ready, Zhang Gang activated an invasion card. I was forcibly pulled into my own god realm. A massive teleportation portal manifested within my domain, and from it emerged a legion of wolf cavalry. Zhang Gang's demigod avatar stood tall above his cavalry, glaring at me as he hissed, "You mongrel! Yesterday, you shattered my son's god realm core. Today, I will ensure you pay for it in blood." He immediately issued a divine command, destroy his god realm core. As the wolf cavalry began their charge, my divine avatar hovered high in the sky. Watching the cavalry's rapid approach, I calmly waved my hand, signaling the Locust Swarm to strike. Instantly, 6 million locusts took to the sky, concealing 550,000 explosive locusts within their ranks. An observing teacher gasped in shock, nearly 7 million elite life forms? Didn't his swarm only have 20,000 yesterday? To nurture nearly 7 million in a single day, such reproductive capability is truly terrifying. Even if they are the most useless of elite life forms, such overwhelming numbers constitute a force that cannot be ignored. A pity, another remarked. This student simply didn't have enough time to grow. In his current state, he cannot possibly withstand the charge of the wolf cavalry. Indeed, the moment the wolf cavalry collided with the locust swarm, the battlefield became entirely one-sided. Although the explosive locusts were numerous, the power of their self-destruction was far too weak. Against the wolf cavalry, who were clad in exquisite full-body armor, their efforts seemed futile. Their defense was staggering. Ordinary self-destructing locusts were utterly unable to breach the protective layers shielding them. In an instant, 1,000,000 locusts had sacrificed themselves in vain, resulting in nothing more than minor injuries to a few wolf cavalrymen. Just as the spectators believed my defeat was certain, the magma locusts concealed within the swarm began to trigger their molten self-destruction. Not only was the explosive force devastating, but it also unleashed torrents of lava, inflicting massive area of effect damage. The tide of battle turned instantly as the wolf cavalry suffered catastrophic losses under the relentless assault of the magma locusts. This sight left the spectating teachers and students in utter disbelief, their eyes nearly bulging from their sockets. What is happening? What manner of creature were these locusts, possessing such explosive power and the ability to spew molten lava? Could they be transcendent life forms? Grade Director Shu Mai was even more astounded. She never imagined I would be harboring such a formidable trump card. Upon witnessing this, Zhang Gang's face turned deathly pale. He immediately commanded the captain of the wolf cavalry to unleash the transcendent power he wielded. Receiving the divine oracle, the captain let out a thunderous roar, releasing a transcendent power, the Frost Circle. In an instant, a frigid, bone-chilling aura swept across the battlefield. Within its radius, the temperature plummeted, successfully halting the locust swarm's advance. Simultaneously, the surviving wolf cavalrymen launched a counter-offensive, and the scales of battle tipped once more. By now, my locust swarm had dwindled to fewer than 500,000. The magma locusts were completely exhausted, yet over 200 of Zhang Gang's wolf cavalry remained. Following his divine command, the wolf cavalry launched a final charge, swiftly penetrating the very heart of the divine realm. The core of my divine realm now lay exposed before them. Just as everyone believed my core was about to be shattered, a cry of astonishment rang out among the spectators. Look, what is that standing before the core of Bai's divine realm? There, guarding the core, stood a slender, solitary figure. This figure possessed flowing white hair that danced in the wind, and a striking set of 4 arms. None of the teachers present could identify the nature of this mysterious entity. Only Shu Mai, after a moment of contemplation, provided the answer. It belonged to the Blade Peak tribe. Members of the Blade Peak tribe are born as transcendent life forms, but this individual appeared to be nearing the level of a heroic life form. At this moment, Zhang Gang was overcome by both profound shock and a surge of intense envy. He had spent decades of arduous effort just to nurture a single heroic life form. Yet the youth before him, a mere high school senior, actually possessed such an elite and peerless subordinate. Alkem's eyes grew bloodshot. I must seize this hero-rank life form at all costs. If I can only shatter the god domain's core, this hero-rank life form of the Bladewind clan will be mine. Following Zhang Gang's command, the remaining Frost Knights charged toward the god domain's core from every direction. Faced with the Frost Knights closing in from all sides, the battle intent of the Blade Thrust Windsword surged to its peak. Its 4 storm greatswords, empowered by its innate Bladewind talent, let out a series of piercing, air-shattering howls. It then unleashed its rank 3 skill, Initial Stage Storm Slash. Instantly, the Blade Thrust Windsword's massive blades began to dance in a frantic blur. It twisted the very atmosphere, transforming into a towering 10-meter-high whirlwind. It stood as a bastion, shielding the god domain's core at its very center. Any Frost Knight that dared to approach the core was instantly torn apart by the Tempest's surging blades. The fortunate were merely maimed, while the rest were utterly crushed where they stood. With its rear secured and the core protected, it turned its full fury toward annihilating the remaining Frost Knights. Activating its rank 1 skill, Initial Stage Cyclone Slash. Guided by the rhythmic dance of its 4 storm greatswords, the Blade Thrust Windsword became a veritable meat grinder on the battlefield, effortlessly carving through more than a dozen Frost Knights. It then unleashed its rank 2 skill, initial stage Gale Slash. 4 colossal waves of blade wind erupted forth. Even from a distance of 100 meters, the force was sufficient to slice the Frost Knights in two. At that moment, the captain of the Frost Knights let out a roar of pure indignation. Once more, he unleashed the glacial ring. The frigid power instantly locked the blade thrust windsword's legs in solid ice. Seizing the opening, the Frost Knight captain spurred his wolf and charged forward. However, the blade thrust windsword remained unfazed. It simply raised its 4 storm greatswords high into the air, gathering a vast, overwhelming amount of wind energy. It condensed the power into a colossal 10-meter-long blade of pure astral wind. Activating its self-created skill, the Stone Severing Strike, it brought the blade down upon the Frost Knight captain with crushing force. The ground of the god domain trembled under the impact, as the captain's mangled remains fell to the earth like a gruesome rain. The teachers and students observing the battle were left utterly speechless, their faces frozen in disbelief. This Frost Knight captain, a transcendent tier life form, had been effortlessly reduced to mincemeat by a single Stone Severing Strike. Simultaneously, Zhang Gang's face turned deathly pale. He found the scene before him impossible to believe. To think that in a mere high school competition, a battle-hardened demigod such as himself would suffer such a crushing defeat. Consumed by rage, Zhang Gangsheng roared, "Bastard!" General of the Ling Cavalry razed this abyss to the ground. Moments later, countless figures of the Ling Cavalry began to emerge from the teleportation gate. At their head was a Ling Cavalry general, a heroic lifeform whose presence was as sharp as a piercing blade. Following behind the general was a legion of 1,000,000 Ling cavalrymen. Among them, more than 1,000 had reached the transcendent rank. However, at that very moment, a far more immense pressure descended upon my god realm. The newcomer was none other than the principal, a true god. "Do you intend to violate your oath?" he demanded. Feeling the overwhelming pressure of a true god, Zhang Gongsheng immediately stammered an explanation. "No, I wouldn't dare. I was merely jesting." With that, he ordered his subordinates to retreat from my god realm immediately before fleeing the classroom in haste. The sudden appearance of the principal, a true god, left the observing teachers and students gasping in awe and terror. Under normal circumstances, the principal was far too preoccupied with his duties to be seen. One would typically only catch a glimpse of him during opening ceremonies or graduation. None had expected to witness the principal's divine majesty during this particular duel. The principal's gaze lingered upon my god realm. He gave a rare nod of approval before his form dissipated into nothingness. As the duel concluded, the teachers and students were forcefully disconnected from the spectator mode. At this moment, Shu Mai, the grade dean, looked upon my exceptional performance with growing admiration. "Baizong, you have done well. However, you must not allow the possession of a heroic lifeform to breed arrogance and complacency within you. A heroic lifeform does not grant invincibility. With your current strength, it would still be difficult for you to break into the grade's top 3. Shumai offered these words of counsel. I nodded with humility. Just as Shumai prepared to depart, I called out to stop her. "Dean Shu, I have a request. I wish to transfer to another class." Instantly, the classroom erupted in a commotion, but the one most affected was undoubtedly the homeroom teacher, Lulu Ocean. After all, my potential was now clear for all to see. Should I continue to develop steadily, I would surely gain entry into a top-tier academy. He in turn hoped to bask in the reflected glory of my success, and reap the rewards bestowed by the institution. Lulu Ocean hurriedly adopted a benevolent facade and pleaded, "Baizong, I admit that I have been negligent in my guidance toward you in the past. I offer you my sincerest apologies. Moving forward, any resources I possess will be prioritized for your cultivation. Please this opportunity to atone for my mistakes." However, I had no intention of accepting Lulu Ocean's belated apology. As someone possessing the life sacrifice ability, I cared little for his meager offerings of prioritized resources. And so I firmly reiterated my request for a class transfer. Hearing this, while I spoke, "Student Bai, a class transfer is not something that can be granted simply because you desire it. If you truly wish to transfer, you must pass a standardized examination arranged by the academy." Upon hearing this, I replied with unwavering resolve that I wished to register for the examination. No sooner had I finished speaking than Qin Shuang abruptly stood up and said, "Dean Hua, I also wish to register for the test." Seeing this, Lulu Tian was on the verge of losing his sanity. Although I was merely a rising talent with hidden potential, and the heights I might reach in the future remained uncertain, Qin was already an undeniably elite student. More importantly, the influence of the Qin family was immense, possessing vast assets and industries. As her teacher, Lulu Tian could reap significant benefits and prestige through this connection. If Qin Shuang were to leave, it would undoubtedly be a devastating loss for him. "Student Qin, if there is anything you are dissatisfied with regarding my teaching, you may speak freely, and I will certainly make amends. There is no need to resort to something as drastic as a class transfer." Lulu Tian forced a smile, desperately attempting to persuade her, but Qin Shuang shattered his delusions immediately. "I am not dissatisfied, I simply no longer wish to remain here." Knowing full well the formidable power of the Qin family and not wishing to offend them, Hua Mai could only agree. Just as Hua Mai was about to depart, another student called out to her, "Dean Hua, I also wish to apply for the examination." This student was Zhang Xiaolong, the class monitor, whose overall strength ranked within the top 10 of the entire grade. He had always been Lulu Tian's most trusted confidant, yet he harbored a long-standing secret crush on Qin Shuang. Therefore, upon seeing her request a transfer, he naturally intended to follow her. At this sight, Luluotian was truly on the verge of tears. After school, I returned home and entered the god domain to assess the current situation. After a fierce battle, the numbers of self-detonating locusts and acid-bursting locusts within the domain had plummeted. The eggs of the common locust were also affected by the combat, with 40% of them destroyed. After a period of cultivation, the god domain managed to produce another billion common locusts. The self-detonating locusts had recovered to 1 million, while the acid-bursting locusts numbered a mere 30,000. With such meager military strength, I lacked the confidence to face tomorrow's examination. At that moment, Zhang Jianfeng sensed my presence and took the fleeing light cavalry are currently hiding within the ore mines. Is it necessary to eliminate them? Hearing this, I immediately issued a divine decree. Capture those light cavalrymen, ensure they remain alive. I have a significant use for them. Zhang Jianfeng accepted my divine decree and mobilized at once. Before long, every single light cavalryman was captured alive. Seeing that midnight had arrived, I once again performed the life sacrifice. As the sacrificial ritual concluded, 3 rewards manifested before me. The option 1, the Alpha Meshgut, capable of rivaling transcendent life forms. Option 2, a level 1 Great Furnace blueprint, allowing for the construction of a massive forge capable of crafting faith-grade equipment at its peak. Option 3, 3 watchtowers to provide long-range vision and prevent enemy infiltration. Surveying these 3 options, I felt a sense of helplessness. None of them seemed truly suitable for my needs. However, at the mention of forging, I recalled the 800 dwarves taken prisoner after Zhang Bin's defeat, whom I had cast into the Divine Realm's mines to labor. Curious about their current state, I extended my consciousness toward them, only to discover that these dwarves were actually thriving. It turned out that the original 800 dwarves had flourished, their numbers growing to 900. They had even forged the extracted ore into various weapons for storage. At that moment, an elderly dwarf sensed my gaze and immediately prostrated himself before me. "O mysterious deity, we thank you for granting us this bountiful life." Hearing this, my confusion only deepened. Utilizing my divine powers, I delved into the elderly dwarf's memory. It appeared that while they were Zhang Bin's core subjects within his divine realm, their lives had been miserable. For Zhang Bin demanded that every citizen be a soldier. From birth, every dwarf was forced to suppress their innate passion for forging. They were subjected to compulsory, rigorous military training. However, since being incorporated into my divine realm, these dwarves had been left entirely to their own devices. For them, mining and forging equipment were their greatest joys. Compared to Zhang Bin's realm, this place was a literal paradise. Seeing the dwarves' profound gratitude and dedication, an idea took root. From the 3 rewards, I immediately chose the Great Furnace blueprint. I then entrusted the monumental task of constructing the Great Furnace to the dwarves. Upon hearing that their deity was granting them a superior forging facility, every single dwarf was overcome with intense excitement. That moment, they officially became my devout followers. I smiled as my divine manifestation vanished from their sight. However, there were far more pressing matters to attend to. I had to feverishly bolster my forces to prepare for tomorrow's trial. The next day, I arrived at the classroom for the examination, only to find that Lu Luotian was intentionally targeting me. While Qin Shuang and Zhang Xiaolong were assigned the simplest tests, he had adjusted the difficulty of my trial to the hell level. Long after the others had completed their exams, I still had no results to show. This was because my divine realm had been invaded by 10,000 Crimson Cloud Goblins, elite-tier lifeforms. Seeing this, my breathing grew heavy and rapid. The Crimson Cloud Goblins possessed an innate resistance to fire, which meant my fire attribute Locust Swarm dealt very little damage to them. Meanwhile, in the spectator mode, a cold, mocking smile remained fixed on Luotian's face. "You only have yourself to blame for rejecting my goodwill. 10,000 Crimson Cloud Goblins are more than enough to shatter your divine realm." Academic Dean Huamai, refusing to look at Luotian's hypocritical face, kept her gaze fixed solely on my divine realm. She held on to the hope that I could once again perform a miracle. As the Crimson Cloud Goblin army breached the divine realm, a massive war between the 2 forces was on the verge of erupting. I immediately issued the divine decree to attack. 2,600,000,000 locusts swept toward the Crimson Cloud Goblin Legion. Not to be outdone, the Crimson Cloud Goblins gathered fireballs in their claws and hurled them at the swarm. Each fireball reduced dozens of locusts to mere ash. Though hundreds of thousands of locusts were annihilated every second, the casualties among the Crimson Cloud Goblins remained incredibly low. Sensing the opportune moment, I issued the command for the self-detonating locusts to strike. 5 million self-detonating locusts, under the cover of the regular swarm, launched a suicide attack against the Goblin Legion. In an instant, the sound of continuous explosions thundered in the air. Finally, the Crimson Cloud Goblins began to suffer actual losses. 6,000 goblins sustained varying degrees of injury. 400 were killed instantly by the blasts. Yet, for a legion numbering 10,000, these losses were practically insignificant. Left with no choice, I had to reveal my trump card. The Magma Burst Locusts were deployed, a force of 400,000 that I had accumulated. They immediately charged into the Crimson Cloud Goblin ranks, detonating into a massive eruption of molten lava, transforming the battlefield where the goblins stood into a lava purgatory. The injured goblins were scorched by the extreme heat, eventually meeting a tragic end within the molten zone. However, the Crimson Cloud Goblins were fire attribute elite lifeforms after all. The sacrifice of 400,000 magma burst locusts only claimed the lives of 3,000 goblins. At this sight, the watching teachers and students all concluded that this time he is surely doomed. Although he still held a hero-tier lifeform as his trump card, no matter how formidable a hero might be, could it truly slaughter 6,500 scarlet goblins? Even the Dean Shumai could no longer bear to watch this unfold. She sent a message advising that if he could no longer hold his ground, he should simply concede. Failure is not shameful, for only by surviving can one find the opportunity to wash away the disgrace of defeat. To this I merely shook my head, then commanded Zhanqi Jianfeng to strike. As its 4 storm greatswords were brandished, vast area surged with violent raging sword winds. Yet the Scarlet Goblin Legion refused to back down. Under a relentless barrage of fireballs, even Zhanqi Jianfeng sustained heavy injuries. After enduring countless waves of fireball attacks, Zhanqi Jianfeng's body was riddled with wounds, leaving it on the verge of death. Yet surrounding it, over 5,000 Scarlet Goblin corpses littered the ground. The remaining 1,000 Scarlet Goblins were gathering their fireballs, intending to deal this resilient hero the final blow. Simultaneously, Luotian could not hide the smug satisfaction on his face. He seemed to already envision the sight of my Divine Realm core being shattered to pieces. But at that very moment, the earth trembled. 900 fully armed dwarven warriors suddenly charged forth. The dwarven elder leading them roared, "Protect the god, slay them!" In the blink of an eye, they had clashed with the remaining 1,000 Scarlet Goblins. Once again, the battle entered a state of fierce, grinding struggle. As the roars of slaughter and explosions resounded once more, the spectators were utterly astounded. They found it even harder to believe that besides my core Emperor insect subordinates, I had also raised an entire Dwarven Legion. Within my divine realm, the sounds of slaughter gradually began to fade. As the Dwarven Elder crushed the skull of the final Scarlet Goblin, my forces had secured the ultimate victory. However, this battle had resulted in the near-total annihilation of the Emperor insects under my command. Of the 900 Dwarven soldiers, only 54 survivors remained. Fortunately, the hero-tier lifeform Zhanqi Jianfeng had survived. While the spectators were still processing the shock of the battle, Shumai formally announced my victory. At this time, the teachers extended invitations to the 3 students who had passed the trial. However, the class monitor Zhang Xiaolong did not answer. Meanwhile, Qin Shuang's gaze was fixed intently upon me. The class teachers immediately realized that I was the key to breaking this deadlock. However, I turned my attention elsewhere and questioned Shumei. "Director Shu, may I ask why the difficulty of my trial was set to such an extreme level?" Shumai replied that the difficulty of an individual trial was collectively determined by all the class teachers of the grade. At that moment, 10 class teachers had voted to assign the highest possible difficulty to my assessment. Amidst the silence, I declared that I wished to see the details of their votes. I asked Shumai to reveal the public voting records, which showed that among the 12 class teachers present, 9 of them wore expressions of deep embarrassment, inwardly cursing Luluotian countless times. Of the remaining 2, one felt fortunate for having cast a blank vote. The other was currently sizing me up from head to toe. Seeing this, I addressed the 2 class teachers who had not voted against me. "Teachers, if I were to join your class, what exactly can you offer me? I seek a class for the sake of resources, and a teacher accepts me for the sake of merit and achievements. It is a matter of both parties obtaining what they require. I am certain that my performance in this trial proves I am worthy of a much higher value." Both teachers held my potential in high regard and immediately laid out their terms. "In today's trial, I witnessed your extraordinary talent in nurturing the dwarf subrace. If you join my class, I can provide you with an army of no less than 10,000 dwarves. With such a force, securing a place within the grade's top 10 is a certainty. In the future, entering the realm's elite universities will no longer be a mere dream." The other teacher, named Tian Wen, spoke up. "Nurturing the core subrace is the true path to power. I possess several resources in my hand that are exceptionally beneficial for the Zerg race. If you join my class, I will help your Emperor insect subrace achieve a complete evolution of its life form." Upon hearing this, I chose the second teacher without a moment's hesitation, for I too believed that the development of the core subrace was of paramount importance. Following my decision, Zhang Xiaolong and Qin Shuang also chose to join as well. At this, Tian Wen was overjoyed. He immediately produced 3 resource cards and distributed them to us. At the sight of the card, waves of shock surged within my heart. This was a Tier 2 construction card. An insect nest spanning 1,000 square meters, capable of hatching 1 million Zerg annually. Its unique effect allowed the power of any sacred artifact socketed within the nest to be manifested perfectly. This meant that once I established this nest within my divine domain, I could utilize 2 high-tier sacred artifacts. First is the Erupting Heart and the Magma Spark, which act upon the insect nest. The nest then perfectly channels the power of both into the incubating insect eggs. In this manner, I can harvest 1 million bursting locusts periodically every year. This is far more efficient than the growth acceleration energy I currently use for nourishment. Suddenly, Shumai's stern voice echoed through the air. "Honored teachers, today is merely a minor trial. It is of little consequence. However, the joint competition held by the Academy 7 days from now is of the utmost importance. It will determine the future allocation of resources for every class. Students and teachers, prepare yourselves well." Once class concluded, I immediately entered my god realm. Upon taking inventory, I found my subjects consisted of 240,000 Emperor insects, 5,000 self-destructing locusts, and 300 bursting locusts. There were also 52 scarlet dwarves and the heroic being Zhanqi Jianfeng. It was then that I was astonished to discover a new title. Scarlet Dwarf? I found it peculiar. The dwarves within my god realm were clearly ordinary. How could their name have changed after a single battle? Driven by curiosity, I went to inspect the condition of these dwarves. Their skin glowed a vibrant crimson, with blood like molten lava coursing beneath the surface. Witnessing this, I hurriedly inspected the attributes of the scarlet dwarves. The scarlet dwarves were now classified as elite life forms. They had evolved from ordinary dwarves after surviving a desperate, bloody struggle. Their racial talents were twofold. The first was forging, which enhances the host's comprehension of weaponsmithing. The second was inheritance, which vastly increases the host's resistance to high temperatures. This allows the host to master fire attribute skills with far greater ease. Astonished by this discovery, I immediately encouraged them to be diligent in their forging and equally industrious in reproduction to expand their clan. Over the next few days, I attended school by day and feverishly expanded my forces by night. With the aid of growth acceleration, it took only 4 days to restore my core Emperor insect swarm to its former scale. As the total number of Emperor insects reached 7.3 billion, it hit the maximum capacity that my god realm's environment could sustain. With a wave of my hand, I activated life sacrifice, and in an instant, 3 choices manifested before me. Option 1, the rank 2 creature, Law of Gluttony. Once integrated into the god realm's core, the core race will receive the energy of gluttony. By consuming a total energy from food 1,000 times greater than their own, they can complete a process of self-purification. However, the biological entity is incomplete and its effects only apply to ordinary life forms. Option 2, a hero template. When bestowed upon a transcendent being, it can elevate them into a heroic life form. Option 3, 1 point of divinity, equivalent to 100 million points of divine power. After careful consideration, I have chosen option 1, the Law of Gluttony. It will have a profound impact on my core subordinates, the Emperor insects. In the long run, its value far exceeds that of a hero template or a single point of divinity. However, with my current resources, it is fundamentally impossible to sustain too many gluttonous Emperor insects. Therefore, I must temporarily scale back my plans. Next, I will bestow the Law of Gluttony upon the insect hive, raising 1 million gluttonous Emperor insects on a regular annual basis. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed and the joint examination is fast approaching. Upon entering my divine realm, I discovered that a new species of transcendent lifeform had been born. It was a swarm of massive Emperor insects, each 1 meter in length. I have named them the Tajiang locusts. Witnessing this bolstered my confidence for the upcoming joint examination. The following day, after the teacher explained the rules of the examination, everyone entered their respective divine realms. At the center of the realm, a golden wheel of light rotated slowly. From it, I could sense the auras of the various homeroom teachers. They were not only responsible for maintaining the exam stability, but also for supervising the students to prevent any form of cheating. Before long, the students from all classes had fully assembled. From within the golden wheel, a cold mechanical voice resonated. The first elimination round of this joint examination is about to commence. Candidates, please prepare yourselves. At this moment, many students grew visibly tense. As the countdown reached 1, I returned to my divine realm. At the edge of my realm, a massive one-way teleportation gate manifested. Waves of ominous energy suddenly billowed from within the portal. Tensing up, I commanded all my subordinates to focus their spirits and prepare for the external threat. Suddenly, a thunderous trampling sound echoed as a massive group of bloated demonic creatures wreathed in demonic chi came charging forward. At this sight, the corner of my mouth twitched slightly. This is only the elimination round. Is such a heavy hand truly necessary? These creatures before me are demonic entities from the abyssal civilization, known as flesh golems. Although they are classified as ordinary life forms, they possess combat power. Furthermore, their thick hides and resilient flesh made them incredibly durable. However, they possessed a glaring weakness. Their movements were sluggish. Thus, I commanded 50,000 explosive locusts to initiate a lava self-destruction. In an instant, the flesh golems were engulfed by the scorching heat of the lava. With every step, they suffered continuous damage from the extreme temperatures. A vast number of flesh golems perished amidst the molten flow. The aroma of roasting flesh began to waft from their charred remains. Noticing this, I dispatched the crimson dwarves. They dragged back the corpses of the fallen flesh golems. These remains were then fed to the ordinary locusts. Unexpectedly, the locusts were not only able to digest them, but found these corpses to be exceptionally nutrient-rich. Brimming with energy, this sight sparked a new idea within me. I immediately swapped the position of the rank 2 sacred artifact, the Law of Gluttony, from the insect nest with 2 rank 1 sacred artifacts on the divine realm core. Instantly, every locust fell under the influence of the divine realm core. They were overcome by an insatiable, overwhelming hunger. Every blade of grass and flower within the divine realm became their prey. This included the remains of the flesh golems. As they gorged themselves, their bodies swelled, evolving from ordinary organisms into elite-tier life forms. In less than 2.5 hours, my rank swelled with over 5 million elite-tier gluttonous locusts. Meanwhile, the instructors watching from the sidelines began to voice their admiration for my performance. However, Lulu Ocean's expression turned as sour as if he had swallowed filth. "It is nothing more than a stroke of blind luck," he sneered. "In terms of true power, his locusts are still utter trash." Teacher Liu, I must respectfully disagree with your assessment. With those words, Teacher Dian Wen enlarged the screen, displaying the explosive locusts I had nurtured. An instructor specializing in appraisal observed the screen and offered his evaluation. Incredible. Though they may be the lowest tier among transcendent lifeforms, they have nonetheless crossed the threshold into transcendence. Luotian scoffed, a transcendent locust is still just a locust, is it not? Their overall combat prowess is barely on par with an ordinary goblin. In some aspects, they are even inferior. Upon hearing this, Dian Wen countered sharply. Teacher Liu, your perspective is far too narrow. You cannot simply compare the inherent weaknesses of the locusts against the specialized strengths of other races. The Imperial Swarm can expand its clan's population by 100, even 1,000-fold within a single year. Can your goblins achieve such a feat? Suppressing a surge of fury, Luotian shouted back. I have no interest in debating such trivialities with you. Let us allow the results to speak for themselves. In my class, there is a student named Lu Mo. His designated race is the goblins. I am willing to wager against you. The most final achievement will undoubtedly surpass his. Do you have the courage to accept? Ordinarily, Dian Wen and Luotian harbored a deep-seated mutual disdain. Driven by the heat of the moment, Dian Wen impulsively agreed. The stakes of the wager were set. The loser must forfeit 5 divine crystals. As the elimination phase of the examination reached its conclusion, only 430 of the 700 candidates managed to pass. The homeroom teachers wore grim expressions. These results were far from glorious. When faced with the choice to proceed to the ranking examination, 130 students chose to withdraw immediately. Several short-tempered teachers began to berate them loudly. Meanwhile, for those students who chose to persist, a booming announcement resonated from above, signaling the commencement of the ranking examination. From the teleportation gate before them, an army of 100,000 skeleton soldiers emerged. The spectators watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. For the skeleton soldiers were known as the lowest form of existence among demonic creatures. In planar warfare, they served as nothing more than cannon fodder to exhaust the enemy's strength. Furthermore, this first wave of skeleton soldiers consisted entirely of the lowest tier of common monsters. Not a single elite-grade creature could be found among their ranks. These points were essentially being given away for free. At that moment, the 130 students who had chosen to withdraw were filled with a soul-crushing regret. Simultaneously, within my divine realm, I looked upon the massive horde of 100,000 skeleton soldiers with a sense of disappointment. Though the skeleton soldiers were weak, they lacked even 2 ounces of flesh. There were hardly enough to satisfy a single bite. After all, I now possessed over 10 billion imperial insects, all starving and waiting for the sustenance required to achieve their next life leap evolution. With a helpless sigh, I issued the command for the 10 billion imperial insects to launch their assault. In an instant, the swarm transformed into a vast black cloud descending upon the skeleton army. Countless skeleton soldiers were swept high into the air. Upon crashing violently back to the earth, they were shattered into piles of broken bone. Countless locusts were likewise pierced and crushed by the skeletal soldiers, reducing them to piles of mangled flesh. The scene could be described as a clash of the weak. While the damage was minimal, the scale of the battle was immense. 2.5 hours later, the battle concluded, leaving the ground carpeted in locust carcasses and shattered skeletal remains. Driven to madness by the hunger induced by the holy relic of gluttony, the locusts could only devour the corpses of their fallen kin to sate their ravenous cravings. Before long, only a vast expanse of withered, dry bones remained upon the earth. Though the sight was unsightly, I could not allow my divine domain to be defiled by such debris. Thus I issued another divine decree, ordering the locusts to clear the bones and cast them into the massive furnaces constructed by the scarlet dwarves to be incinerated. Before we could rest, the second wave of skeletal soldiers arrived. Their numbers still reached 100,000, but among them were many iron-boned skeletons, alike demonic creatures. This time I could no longer send ordinary locusts to their deaths. The combination of self-destructing locusts and magma-burst locusts once again demonstrated its devastating power. The self-destructing locusts were tasked with pinning the enemy down, while the magma-burst locusts initiated their molten explosions. While inflicting immense damage, they left behind a scorched landscape of searing magma. Faced with the survivors, the magma dealt continuous high-temperature damage. Even the iron-boned skeletons could not long endure within the molten flow. Swiftly, the second wave of the assault was shattered by my hand. Observing the lethality of the magma field against the skeletal soldiers, a new strategy formed in my mind. I chose to maintain the magma zone upon the battlefield, occasionally commanding the magma-burst locusts to spit fresh molten rock to sustain the heat. Simultaneously, I tasked the scarlet dwarves to smelt vast quantities of iron ore in their great furnaces. Once reduced to a glowing molten flow, it was poured directly onto the volcanic ground. This maneuver transformed the vast area beyond the teleportation gate into a lethal forbidden zone, with temperatures so extreme they could instantaneously vaporize flesh and bone. The skeletal soldiers emerging from the portal were annihilated the very moment they set foot within the heat. I waited leisurely at the perimeter, commanding the Sword Peak assassins to eliminate any stragglers who managed to escape. As the waves passed, no matter how many skeletal soldiers arrived, they were dealt with effortlessly, and simultaneously, he easily surpassed the competition and entered the top 30 of the grade. Outside the field, Luluocean witnessed this and remarked dismissively, "What is so impressive about that? He has merely managed to endure until the 7th wave, though Mo from our class has also advanced into the 7th wave." Hearing this, many head instructors turned their gaze toward Lumo's divine realm. There, they've observed his goblin subordinates. Each one wielded a massive bone as a weapon. Several instructors noted that the goblins under Lumo's command had established a path for a lifeform leap, evolving from ordinary beings into elite lifeforms. Once standard goblins meet the training requirements, they can ascend to become great goblins, an elite tier of existence. Furthermore, numerous structures stood within Lumo's divine realm. 13 level 1 sword towers, 9 level 1 lightning towers, and 12 level 1 fireball towers. The total value of these structures alone is no less than 10 million divine power points. Seeing the shock on the instructors' faces, Luluocean felt a surge of arrogant pride. That Lumo's divine realm had reached such a scale was entirely due to the support of his uncle, Luluocean himself. However, before Luluocean's joy could even last for 3 seconds, the instructors were suddenly drawn to the battlefield within another student's divine realm. Within Qinshuang's divine realm, 100 level 1 lightning towers stood towering and majestic. Her innate elite life forms, the Thunder Sparrows, numbered a staggering 300,000. In addition, Qinshuang possessed 100 ancient treants classified as transcendent life forms, serving as her auxiliary combat race. Furthermore, among Akar's Thunder Sparrows, a heroic life form had been born, the golden-crowned Thunder Eagle. Regardless of their level, the skeletons invading her divine realm could not even endure for 5 seconds before being engulfed by a deluge of violent lightning. Witnessing this scene, the head instructors were unanimous in their praise. As for Luluocean, his heart felt as if it were bleeding. For Qinshuang had originally been a student of his class, and her achievements should have rightfully belonged to him. Had it not been for my departure, Qinshuang would never have left. Now Luluocean's resentment toward me had festered into pure hatred. As the 10th wave of the ranking examination concluded, only 18 students remained standing. I was one among them. A cold mechanical voice resonated once more above the students' heads. The 11th wave is about to begin. The difficulty shall increase significantly. Students, steel your hearts and prepare yourselves. Hearing this, the 18 students immediately grew vigilant, their eyes fixed on the teleportation gate as a figure slowly emerged from within. Yet, the moment the head teacher saw that figure, they all let out a collective exclamation of disbelief. For the invader of this wave was actually a heroic life form. Under normal circumstances, a standard heroic life form would not cause such seasoned teachers to lose their composure, but the heroic life form appearing in this ranking assessment was an exception. Its base combat strength was incredibly weak. One could even call it the lowliest of all heroic life forms. However, when placed in a specific environment, the power it could unleash would increase 1,000-fold. That unique situation occurs the moment the bone controller enters a divine realm. As the bone shards scattered across the ground act as if they have received a divine summons, flying toward the bone controller one after another. Across the previous 10 waves, millions of skeletal soldiers had fallen, leaving behind enough bone fragments to form a massive mountain. Under the bone controller's command, countless shards converged, condensing into a skeletal giant as vast as a mountain. The subordinate races that had previously held the advantage were now dealt a devastating blow. In less than 3 minutes, 8 students were forced to withdraw from the assessment due to the heavy losses sustained by their subordinate races. The remaining 10 students continued to fight back with everything they had, resisting with dogged determination. However, once the bone controller entered my divine realm, it failed to display its terrifying power. Instead, it was chased to and fro by the flames of my artificial volcano. For within my realm, the majority of the bone shards had already been incinerated into ash by the lava, leaving the bone controller without its essential empowerment. Deprived of its source of power, its combat strength was nothing short of pathetic, and it was relentlessly pursued and hacked into 18 pieces by the sharp-wind decapitating blade. Thus, I once again became the first among the final 10 to overcome the 11th wave. This is cheating. This is absolute cheating. Luluocean spoke with venomous envy. The fact that I dispatched the heroic bone controller so effortlessly was something he found utterly unbearable. Even the other head teachers began to harbor doubts, simply because the manner in which I handled the bone controller was far too leisurely. It led them to believe I had prior knowledge of the trial, an accusation that Dian Wen naturally stepped forward to refute in defense of his student. Dian Wen, you are shielding your student. Be careful, or I shall file a formal complaint with the Board of Education. Luluocean threatened. You are publicly slandering my student. You claim he cheated. Do you have any proof? Dian Wen shot back, refusing to yield an inch. Luluocean let out a cold snort. Is proof even necessary? Everyone here possesses discerning eyes. Anyone could see his peculiar behavior while battling the skeletal soldiers. After all, who would take the initiative to clean the battlefield after defeating such foes? Unless, of course, that person knew beforehand that a bone controller, one capable of manipulating remains, would soon appear. Clearing away the bone fragments is a highly effective way to weaken a bone controller's prowess. I have grave suspicions that he possessed prior knowledge of the examination, Lu declared. This is a severe act of academic dishonesty. The Academy must conduct a rigorous investigation. Dan Van was berated into silence, unable to offer a rebuttal. Though he trusted my character, even he found these circumstances far too convenient. It was then that the Dean of Academic Affairs Hua Mai stepped forward to intervene. Regarding student Baizong's performance, allow me to offer a fair perspective. The contents of this joint examination were personally arranged by the principal before our departure. Even I was unaware of the specific details before the trial began. If Baizong knew the contents beforehand, there is only one possibility. The principal himself leaked the exam to him. Instructor Liu, do you truly believe the principal would commit such a foolish act? That final question caused a cold sweat to break out across Lulu Ocean's brow. If he continued to insist that I had stolen the exam papers, it would mean he was accusing the principal of aiding in the deception. How could the majesty of a true god ever tolerate such insolent suspicion? Lulu Ocean could not afford the risk of offending the principal. He could only change his tune, stammering, Perhaps I was mistaken. Student Baizong must have relied solely on luck to defeat the Bone Controller. Even so, Lulu Ocean could not bear to see me achieve such prestigious results. He continued his assault, even if he did not cheat. His achievement is largely due to sheer fortune, which is fundamentally unfair to the other students. The other homeroom instructors all turned their gazes toward Hua Mai. My sudden rise to prominence had filled them with a sense of impending threat. Only by suppressing me could their own students have a chance to claim the most bountiful rewards. Upon hearing Lulu Ocean's words, a flash of mockery appeared on Hua Mai's cold countenance. Instructor Liu, as a demigod yourself, do you realize how utterly ridiculous you sound? The civilization of the god realm and its cultivation of the seeds of life has never been about fairness. It is governed regardless of the means Baizong utilized to achieve such results. As long as there was no deception involved, this achievement rightfully belongs to him. As for the fairness you speak of, do you truly believe it was just to use your authority to secretly funnel resources to your nephew Lumo? Is such an act fair to the other students? The family of student Qin Shuang contributed tens of millions in divine power. Was that fair to the rest of the class? Lulu Ocean found himself momentarily speechless. He never imagined that the secrets he had so carefully concealed would be exposed by Shu Mai. Curse it all, to think Lumo was your nephew. No wonder you were so eager to wager against me using him. Only now did Danbin fully grasp the situation. Lulu Ocean had meticulously planned to deceive him from the beginning. However, when reflecting upon my sudden and meteoric rise, and how effortlessly I neutralized the hero-grade bone manipulator, he felt a surge of triumph. As the saying goes, your own schemes have backfired. My student Baizong has already cleared the 11th wave of the assessment. For your nephew Lu Mo to even attempt the 11th wave, I suspect the difficulty will prove far greater than he ever anticipated. Lulu Ocean frantically turned his gaze toward Lu Mo's monitor. He saw the bone giant, commanded by the bone manipulator, unleashing a violent path of destruction within Lu Mo's divine realm. Massive structures were reduced to ruins, and countless elite great goblins were utterly annihilated. Lu Mo struggled to endure the bone giant's onslaught, but unable to withstand the pressure any longer, he was forced to concede defeat. While ranking 7th in the entire grade is a respectable feat, compared to me he is still leagues behind. The results of the wager have been decided. My student has successfully surpassed the 11th wave. Your nephew Lu Mo failed to do the same. Teacher Liu, the faculty here are all witnesses to our bet of 5 divinity points. Surely you do not intend to go back on your word? While Dianvan basked in his victory, Lulu Ocean burned with the desire to leave immediately, yet he could not bear the shame of such a disgraceful exit. Driven into a corner, he could only grit his teeth in silent fury. He extracted 5 divinity points from his divine realm, condensed them into a card, and thrust it into Dean Van's hand. He did not leave without a cold warning. Teacher Dean, I suggest you guard those 5 divinity points well. For one day, I shall reclaim everything I have lost. Dean Van accepted the divinity card without the slightest hesitation and fired back. I thank you for your divinity. Rest assured, I will ensure that day never comes. The ranking assessment continued to unfold. After disposing of the hero-grade bone manipulator, I waited for a considerable time before the 12th wave of the invasion commenced. Leading the assault was another hero-grade bone manipulator, followed by 10 skeleton knight summoners. I deployed my sword-edge slayers and 20 explosive locusts to the front lines, easily crushing this wave of invaders. However, for the other students, things were not nearly as simple. By the 11th wave, they had struggled immensely to slay a single bone manipulator. Before they could even clear the shattered remains littering the ground, the 12th wave unleashed yet another bone manipulator, accompanied by 10 skeleton knights. The psychological toll on these young geniuses was becoming immense. Xiaolong complained bitterly, "Why are they coming again? Is there no end to this?" Unable to endure the overwhelming pressure of the bone manipulator, 3 more students muttered their resignations and withdrew from the examination. The top 3 had finally emerged, myself, Tan Shuang, and Zhang Xiaolong. As for who would claim the top rank, that remained to be seen. During the 14th wave, Zhang Xiaolong's core race suffered devastating casualties. He chose to withdraw, securing his position at 3rd on the rankings. By the 16th wave, Tan Shuang's core race, the Thunder Sparrows, reached the brink of total exhaustion. With over half of her lightning towers destroyed and 6 ancient triumphs fallen, she realized she could not withstand the next assault and chose to concede. I naturally ascended to the 1st position on the leaderboard. Yet, fully immersed in the trial, I remained unaware of the rankings and continued my struggle. As the examination reached the 20th wave from within the teleportation portal, the first to emerge was once again the heroic tier entity, the Bone Manipulator. However, trailing behind it were Transcendent Tier Skeleton Knights, their numbers reaching a staggering 5,000. But against my Nitro Locusts, such overwhelming numbers were not an advantage but a fatal weakness. The relentless explosion sent massive shockwaves through the tightly packed legion of skeleton knights. The devastation was caused not only by the blasts themselves but also by the collateral damage of their own allies being hurled into one another. After several rounds of continuous bombardment, the 5,000 skeleton knights were torn apart, their limbs scattered and their combat effectiveness utterly crippled. The bone manipulator attempted to gather the shattered remains to launch a counter-offensive, but the moment it stepped from the portal, it was met by the iron-cutting swordwind. This too was a heroic tier entity, and it had its sights set on its target. With a single strike of its stone-cleaving slash, it sent the bone manipulator into eternal slumber. The remaining skeleton knights were picked off one by one under the guerrilla tactics of the iron-cutting sword wind and the crimson dwarves. Having surpassed the 20th wave, every homeroom teacher present stared fixedly at the sole remaining screen. Once more, the cold, emotionless voice resonated through the hall. The 21st wave is about to commence. The difficulty will increase drastically. Student, prepare yourself. Upon the command, the teleportation portal expanded violently, swelling to 4 times its original size as a thick, suffocating aura of death began to bleed from the gate. The surrounding temperature plummeted significantly. A magnificent throne of bleached bone emerged from the teleportation portal. Upon that bone throne sat a skeleton lord, his frame as white and polished as jade. 2 void bone wraiths stood respectfully at his side, serving as mere attendants. Beneath the bone throne stood 10,000 skeleton knights. Despite being extraordinary life forms themselves, their only purpose now was to serve the skeleton lord. Yet another skeleton lord had appeared. The supervising teachers watching the battle cried out in shock one after another. A lord rank entity had appeared as early as the 21st wave. One must understand that even the demigods present might not possess a creature of such high rank as a lord-class entity. Within my divine realm, the moment I laid eyes on the skeleton lord, I knew my trial had reached its conclusion. A lord-class entity was absolutely not something I could contend with at my current level. I decisively chose to forfeit the assessment. The very moment I declared my withdrawal, an immense gravitational force erupted from the portal, pulling the skeletal legion back within. The skeleton lord snapped off one of his own ribs and hurled it with all his might. That bone transformed into a streak of light, hurtling toward the edge of my divine realm. I was then teleported back into the void. Looking up, I saw a massive leaderboard rising from the golden wheel of light. And there at the very top of the rankings was my name. I was overcome with both shock and jubilation. Although I expected to perform well, I never imagined my results would be this extraordinary. Predictably, Lulu Ocean was fuming with rage, yet there was nothing he could do. Not only did he fail to bring honor to his class, but he also lost 5 points of divinity. It was a total disaster for him. In contrast, Dianwen was completely immersed in overwhelming joy. His class had secured the top position, and he had even gained 5 additional points of divinity. Upon the conclusion of the final examination, the rewards included an iron ore resource card, divine realm territory valued at 100 divine power points, and a rank 1 sacred artifact. At that moment, my teacher, Dian Wen, sent a voice transmission advising me to choose the rank 1 venomous orb. Without hesitation, I selected the rank venomous orb from the list of rewards. The remaining rewards also included a voice transmission card, a rank 1 temple, and the reward for the top 10, a divine power weapon. The only restriction was that its value must be under 100. I reflected on the current state of my divine realm. The iron-cutting sword peaks already possess 4 storm greatswords. There is no need to change their weaponry for now. My core subordinates, the Emperor Swarm, do not utilize weapons. Thus, they require no further consideration. Excluding these 2, the ownership of this divine weapon will fall to the naked dwarves. Combining their attributes and the racial traits of the naked dwarves, I entered criteria such as fire attribute, hammer-type weapons into the search interface. Very quickly, suitable options began to appear. My gaze settled upon the divine warhammer with the highest value. It was forged from the core of a 9-headed serpent overlord, and it contained a staggering amount of fire energy. This warhammer perfectly satisfied all the conditions for the naked dwarves, with the only final requirement being that the user must be a fire element heroic lifeform. The reward for the top 5, an extraordinary seed, was already in my possession. The reward for the top 3 was an upgrade to the Divine Realm's core. Finally witnessed by the gathered students, Dean Shumai personally handed me the card containing a single point of divinity. Returning to the classroom, our homeroom teacher, Dean Van, scanned the remaining 42 students. He continued, "Now I invite the top 3 of our class to the stage to receive their rewards." Chin Shuang and a student named Shu Sun stepped onto the platform. Dean Van opened the class resource list. President Bai has shown brilliantly in this joint examination, securing the first place rank. The class reward is 100 class contribution points and the freedom to choose 1 item from the class's high-grade resource treasury. I swept my gaze across the list of high-grade resources. After 3 seconds of consideration, I decided upon the Spring of Life. It can gush forth vast quantities of spring water infused with life energy to nourish life and transform the surrounding environment. Once placed within the Divine Realm, it would immediately benefit my core Emperor Swarm subordinates. The moment I returned to my seat after receiving the reward, I received a private voice message from Shusun. President Bai, sell me the divinity point you obtained in the joint exam. I will trade 105 million divine power for it. Let us transact now. I frowned. Trading among classmates is a common occurrence, but his commanding tone was deeply unpleasant. Furthermore, a single point of divinity is condensed from 100 million divine power. For Shusun to be willing to pay an additional 5 million divine power, was it because his family possessed far too much wealth? I did not believe Shusun was merely a prodigal son. There was undoubtedly a hidden agenda behind this trade proposal. Seeing my prolonged silence, Shusun urged me, asking what there was to hesitate about. As long as I agreed 105 million divine power would be mine, this amount of divine power was enough to purchase a life leap evolution path for the Emperor insects. To change my own destiny let out a cold sneer. Shusun's impatient urging only confirmed one thing. This proposal was absolutely a trap. I do not agree. I refused him decisively. 110 million divine power. If you pass up this opportunity, you will never find another like it. I used only a single word to express my stance. Shusun was so enraged that he gnashed his teeth in fury. His clan possessed 19 demigods. One quasi-true god. To say their power reached the heavens was no exaggeration. But what did my family have? Who gave me the courage to defy him? Director Bai, my grandfather is preparing to ascend to the rank of true god and is in dire need of divinity. Sell this point of divinity to me. In addition to the divine power, I will owe you a personal favor. To obtain the divinity, Shusun suppressed his anger and sent me another voice message. I wavered slightly. 110 million divine power was undoubtedly an immense fortune. If I obtained this amount, I could increase the number of Emperor insects supported by the divine realm by dozens of times. By then, something like divinity would be attainable once more. Just as I was about to accept Shusun's offer, another private message arrived from Qin Shuang. The divinity point you obtained in the joint examination. I will pay 150 million divine power to buy it. Do you agree? I was utterly stunned. 150 million divine power was a full 40 million higher than Shusun's offer. Was Qin Shuang truly so wealthy? Furthermore, this price far exceeded the inherent value of a single point of divinity. Qin Shuang was offering an extra 50% in divine power just to secure it. What could be the reason behind this? I could not help but ask. Isn't one point of divinity worth 100 million divine power? Very quickly, a reply came back from Qin Shuang. Do you truly lack even this basic common knowledge? While it is true that one point of divinity can be condensed using 100 million divine power, however, the prerequisite is that the divine power must be self-sufficient, produced and consumed within one's own domain. This means one must use the power of faith generated by their own followers to condense divine power, and only then can it be used to condense one's own divinity. If the power of faith from another deity is mixed in, the success rate of condensing divinity will plummet significantly. The current market price for divinity is 145 million divine power, and even then there is high demand with zero supply. As Qin Shuang shared this knowledge, I finally realized the staggering value of divinity. It was a true revelation. That brat Shuqun actually dared to try and swindle me for his own profit. This was something I could not tolerate. I gave Shuqun a direct one-word response. Upon receiving my reply, Shuqun nearly exploded with fury. You only took first place in the joint exam through sheer luck, and now you've grown arrogant. Just you wait. I sold the divinity to Qin Shuang instead. 150 million divine power was now in my hands. At last I have come into a true fortune. The feeling was akin to an ordinary person suddenly winning a 5 million yuan lottery. I had become wealthy overnight. Perhaps in the eyes of many, my actions were like discarding a melon to pick up a sesame seed, but I have no regrets. With this amount of divine power, I can fully commit to the development of my divine realm. By nurturing my loyal followers, will that single point of divinity not eventually return to me through their future sacrifices? Returning home after class, I immediately immersed myself in the divine realm. I utilized every resource obtained from today's joint exam, converting them all into my own foundation and strength. A 20 square kilometer forest terrain was integrated into the divine realm, merging with the existing woodland. I selected a site for the level 1 temple near the encampment of the Crimson Dwarves. I then placed the Spring of Life within a barren patch of land. Day by day, this desolate ground will be nourished by the Spring of Life until it becomes a lush, fertile territory. Furthermore, I used a reproduction card on the great locusts, causing their already rapid breeding rate to skyrocket. Having settled these matters, I took the Purgatory Warhammer and the Transcendent Seed to the Crimson Dwarves. After a period of recovery and growth, the number of Crimson Dwarves had increased slightly, reaching 59. When not in battle, they spent their days mining and forging. Their lives were simple and peaceful. My appearance sent the Crimson Dwarves into a state of intense fervor. They knelt one after another, chanting. As I gazed upon the kneeling Crimson Dwarves, I couldn't help but sigh inwardly. If only they could become part of my core forces, it would be ideal. He first delivered a few formal, polite remarks. Then he bestowed upon them the divine weapon, the Purgatory Warhammer. Next, he selected the strongest youth among the Crimson Dwarves to receive a Transcendent Seed. He named the youth Shen Shui to encourage him to increase his strength, hoping he would one day become a hero worthy of wielding the Purgatory Warhammer. Upon receiving these two gifts, the Crimson Dwarves were overcome with excitement. Their faith in me grew even more pure. To a man, they all became devout believers. The Crimson Dwarf who received the Transcendent Seed, Shen Shui, even ascended to the rank of a fanatic. I nodded in satisfaction, offering a few more words of encouragement before departing. At this point, the only reward from the midterm exam I had yet to use was the rank 1 sacred artifact, the venomous orb. I had chosen this item following the suggestion of my homeroom teacher Dean Van, but what purpose did it truly serve? Just as I was questioning its utility, a video call request arrived from my teacher Dean Van. I quickly answered the call. Dean Van's figure appeared before me. "Teacher, is there a reason you are reaching out to me so late?" I asked. Dean Van did not beat around the bush and spoke plainly. "Regarding today's joint exam and the matter of whether you or Lu Mo were superior, Teacher Luloshan and I wagered 5 divinity points. In the end, I won a great victory. I hurried to offer my congratulations." "Congratulations, teacher." However, I wondered what his gaining 5 divinity points had to do with me, and why he had called specifically to boast. Dean Van smiled and said, "This wager was won partly due to your efforts, so I intend to share a portion of the winnings with you." With that, Dean Van opened his hands. 2 items appeared. One was a divinity card I was already familiar with. It contained 150 million units of divine power. The other was an egg radiating a dark demonic aura. The egg was still pulsating as if it were still alive. There is no need for me to introduce the divinity card, but I shall focus my explanation on this fiend embryo. Dean Van continued, "This is a portion of the spoils I obtained while campaigning in the Outer Realms. It is an egg personally laid by the Heavenly Demon Insect King. It was infusing a special secret technique into a stillborn embryo. Though it is stillborn, it is capable of producing 10 liters of demonic embryo essence every single day. As a low-tier race, they can assimilate into the lowest form of heavenly demon insects by consuming the demon fetus element. When you first join my class, I promised to help you achieve a life leap for your core race. This is the very evolution path for the life leap of the imperial insects that I possess." Hearing Dean Van's explanation, my gaze toward the demon fetus grew burning with desire. The primary reason I was never taken seriously by the Academy's teachers was that my core race, the imperial insects, was considered utter trash. But if I could master a life leap evolution path, these imperial insects would assimilate into heavenly demon insects. While their potential might not yet rival an innate elite life form like Tan Sang's Thunder Sparrow, they could still reach the power level of a 100-man goblin legion compared to ordinary life forms. Choose one of these two. Consider it your share of the winnings from my successful wager. As Dean Van spoke, I did not hesitate for a single moment. I chose the demon fetus. I had to seize this life leap evolution path for my core imperial insect. Seeing my choice, Dean Van nodded with satisfaction and added, "The heavenly demon insects and the poison attribute share a very high degree of compatibility. You can integrate the Tier 1 holy artifact, the poison orb, into your core. The results will surely satisfy you." My eyes immediately lit up with anticipation. "Thank you, teacher. I will certainly not fail your expectations." Don Van gave me a final look of approval, preparing to end the call. I suddenly stopped him, asking, "Teacher, please wait a moment. I wanted to ask if you have any channels that can provide a massive supply of meat. Low quality is acceptable. The meat provided in the marketplace is simply too expensive." Don Van was puzzled at first, but then a realization dawned upon him. "During the elimination round of the joint examination, I witnessed you commanding your imperial insects to devour the flesh of the blood golems. If you intend to use meat to nurture your insects, I advise against purchasing from the marketplace. The cost is far too high for such meager returns." Dean Van continued his advice. "The headmaster is currently conquering an abyssal demon plane. There will undoubtedly be a vast quantity of blood golem corpses available. I can make some inquiries on your behalf. Then I must offer my deepest thanks, teacher." I spoke with haste and gratitude, for I truly was in a desperate situation. The effects of the Tier 2 holy artifact, the Law of Gluttony, were simply too powerful. Under its influence, the imperial insects within my divine realm have turned into bottomless pits. They consume at an incredible speed as their numbers skyrocket. Relying solely on the natural resources produced within my divine realm, it is fundamentally impossible to satisfy the insatiable hunger of these imperial insects. Finding a new food source was now the most prudent course of action. Dean Van nodded before taking his leave. I hurried to find a suitable location to place the demon fetus. Once placed, the demon fetus quickly produced its first drop of demonic essence. I captured a locust and fed it the essence. Immediately, billows of demonic heat erupted from the insect's body. The demonic heat soon solidified into a cocoon, enveloping the locust entirely. I waited beside the demonic cocoon for 2 days before it finally began to crack open. Emerging before me was a creature resembling a locust, 10 centimeters long with razor-sharp mandibles and a singular piercing horn upon its head. Upon inspecting its status, I found that while the core heavenly demon insect was still technically a common creature, its strength was 100 times that of a normal locust. This power surge was evident from the massive amount of faith power it provided. Furthermore, I noticed that the heavenly demon insect's profile lacked any information regarding reproduction. This meant that any heavenly demon insect assimilated from a common locust was unable to breed. Every single heavenly demon insect must be manually converted using the demonic essence. A single drop could assimilate 1 locust. With 20 drops per milliliter, 10 liters would yield 200,000 heavenly demon insects. If all went smoothly, I could produce 200,000 of these insects daily, gradually building a formidable army through sheer accumulation. Additionally, the newborn heavenly demon insects were influenced by the holy relic of the Law of Gluttony, causing them to fall into a feeding frenzy the moment they were born. After consuming food worth 1,000 times their own energy, their size increased tenfold and they evolved into elite-tier life forms. I then experimented by integrating a rank 1 poison bead into the core of the divine realm, while a portion of the normal locusts showed minor mutations into common-tier venomous insects with negligible power. Over 90% of the newborn heavenly demon insects mutated into poison-winged heavenly demon insects, reaching the elite tier with an explosive surge in strength. I could not help but marvel. The words of teacher Dean Van were indeed correct. The heavenly demon insects and the poison attribute were a perfect match. Within a certain plane of the demonic abyss, Principal Doan Bean sat with a deep, troubled frown. Though he was a true god, he had encountered a most difficult predicament. He had been campaigning in the demonic abyss for 4 years, and the demonic creatures slain by his followers were beyond count. Yet, as the war progressed, small issues had accumulated into a catastrophic problem. The battlefield was now carpeted in the shattered bone fragments of the skeleton race. Even though Doan Bin had constructed dozens of incinerators to clear the debris, his efforts were like a single drop in a vast ocean. Furthermore, the excessive burning caused severe atmospheric pollution, leading his followers to suffer from lung disease and causing their lifespans to plummet. Leaving the remains on the battlefield was not an option either, as they constantly released demonic chi, polluting the environment and breeding plagues. Attempting to seal the corpses into cards was a waste of divine power, as there was simply no value to be gained from them. Once the divine power within the cards was exhausted, the corpses would burst forth and continue to spread their pollution. Principal Doan Bin was plagued by a massive. At that very moment, an interplanetary video call request arrived. Principal Yinping frowned. He recalled that the caller was a teacher from the academy, though the two were not particularly close. Why would this teacher expend such a vast amount of divine power just to initiate a private interplanetary call? As the video connected, the silhouette of Tianwen appeared before the principal. Teacher Tian, is there something you require? Tianwen spoke plainly. Reporting to the principal, I have taken the liberty of calling to ask if you could provide the remains of flesh demon golems. One of my students wishes to purchase them. Upon hearing this, Principal Yinping's interest was piqued. What use does your student have for the corpses of flesh demon golems? Tianwen spoke truthfully, stating the student intended to use them to nourish his core subordinates. His core subordinates were locusts. During the elimination round of the midterm exam, he had utilized the remains of flesh demon golems with no adverse effects. With that, Tianwen sent the footage of my performance during the elimination round to the principal. After watching the video, the principal's eyes gleamed. Was this student not the young genius who had clashed with a demigod just a few days ago? He had not expected mere locusts to possess such utility. Immediately after, he let out a heavy sigh. Regrettably, the environment of the demon abyss is unsuitable for these locusts to inhabit. Otherwise, we could deploy a swarm to devour the flesh of those demon golems, which would save us a significant amount of divine power. Ultimately, the principal ordered his subordinates to collect 1 million flesh demon golem corpses, sealing them into a card for Tianwen to deliver to me. Consider it a gesture of support from the principal himself. Thus, 1 day later, Tianwen once again initiated a video call with the principal. The reason, the flesh demon golems provided yesterday had already been entirely consumed. More remains were required. Ideally, a long-term supply would be established for as long as possible. The principal was astonished. Just how many insects would it take to devour 1 million corpses in a single day? Following his shock, the principal grew profoundly delighted. Disposing of the flesh demon golem remains was a beneficial arrangement for him as well. However, a long-term supply could not be provided for free. After all, divine power does not simply fall from the sky. The principal himself had a vast number of subordinates to maintain. Every day, the expenditure of divine power reached astronomical proportions. But considering I was the sole buyer, the principal set an exceptionally low price. For a single point of divine power, I could purchase 100 million blood and flesh demon husks. The minimum requirement for delivery was 10,000 divine power. This price barely covered the principal's own consumption of divine power. Upon learning the price of the demon husks from Dian Wen, I couldn't help but marvel at the bargain. It was 100 times cheaper than the meat available in the mall. With a decisive wave of my hand, I spent 1 million divine power on my very first purchase. With an abundance of food, the locusts within my divine domain flourished. Not only did their number skyrocket, but their quality reached new heights. Within the domain, the population of elite rank locusts reached the absolute limit that the divine domain could sustain. I initiated a life sacrifice, and a massive sacrificial formation once again manifested in the skies above the domain. In an instant, 12 billion elite rank locusts were shattered, transforming into countless streams of life energy that surged into the formation. After the formation absorbed the final shred of life energy, 3 choices appeared before me. Option 1, 5 giant warriors, transcendent rank life form. Option 2, a level 3 poison explosion crystal. Once integrated into the domain core, it would grant my subordinates the elementary poison explosion technique. If bestowed upon a hero rank life form, it could be mastered up to the 9th level. Option 3, a decomposition machine capable of breaking down matter to extract pure energy. Seeing these 3 choices, my eyes gleamed with anticipation. Sacrificing 12 billion elite locusts in exchange for these rewards was undoubtedly worth the price. Option 1 offered 5 giant warriors, transcendent beings from a race renowned for their sheer destructive power. As for option 2, the level 3 poison explosion technique, combined with my heavenly demon insects and the poison pearl sacred artifact would be a perfect synergy. However, my divine domain core was currently only at level 3. Having already equipped the level 2 sacred artifact, the law of gluttony, the level 1 poison pearl, there were simply no slots left to accommodate the level 3 poison explosion technique. Even if I chose it now, it would be a long time before I could actually utilize it. While option 3, the decomposition machine, seemed ordinary, its brief description hinted at something far from mundane. It could decompose matter to extract energy crystals. I had heard of energy crystals before. They were reputedly a prohibitively expensive food source for magic-type subordinates. If I chose the decomposition machine, wouldn't I be able to generate divine power effortlessly every single day? After weighing the choices for a moment, I decided on the decomposition machine to secure a steady stream of passive income. Once the decision was made, the decomposition machine materialized before me. To test its efficiency, I gathered 5 tons of iron ore for an initial experiment. As the iron ore was fed into the machine, it began to operate with frantic intensity. 5 hours later, 3 fist-sized energy crystals dropped from the machine. These are essence crystals, which can serve as nourishment for specialized races or as premium materials for forging. Each crystal is worth 5 divine power points, a sustainable path to wealth. I am quite satisfied with the decomposition machine. Suddenly, a chorus of prayers echoed within my mind. This is the function of a level 1 shrine, allowing me to perceive the innermost thoughts of my believers. The prayer revealed that while mining, the redneck dwarves were attacked by an undead entity, resulting in 3 of them being injured. Shui, the patriarch of the redneck dwarves, is currently resisting the undead, hoping the god will bestow divine grace to save his clan. My heart tightened. How could there be an undead presence within his divine realm? I immediately dispatched a strand of my consciousness to investigate and locate Patriarch Shui. As my divine avatar descended, I witnessed Shui locked in combat with a withered skeleton. Shui wielded a weapon of faith modeled after the Purgatory Warhammer, swinging it with immense power. Yet his opponent was a small skeleton, barely 1 meter tall. Its entire body was as white as jade, translucent and shimmering like a work of art. This reminded me of the skeleton lord that appeared during the 21st wave of the Swarm trial. This small skeleton and that skeleton lord were virtually cast from the same mold. Observing the battle patiently, I realized the small skeleton possessed terrifying combat prowess. When its skeletal claws collided with the warhammer, it easily left deep gouges on the weapon, while its own claws remained completely unscathed. Instinctively, I attempted to use my divine authority to inspect the skeleton's attributes, but the attempt failed. The system notified me that since the skeleton was not my believer and I lacked scouting techniques, I could not view its information. Seeing that Shui was no match for the small skeleton, I issued a divine decree summoning Jianqi Jianfeng to join the fray. Jianqi Jianfeng truly lived to the reputation of a heroic life form. The moment he entered the stage, a single whirlwind slash shattered the small skeleton into a pile of bones. However, in the blink of an eye, the scattered remains reformed once more. The small skeleton leaped forward again, aggressively charging at Jianqi Jianfeng. Jianqi Jianfeng struck again, shattering the skeleton once more, but it quickly returned to its original state. I noticed that during this second restoration, it took exactly 1 second longer than the first. I surmised that being shattered was not without cost to the small skeleton. Indeed, as the skeleton was broken repeatedly, its recovery speed slowed and its strength began to wane. Seizing the opportunity, I stepped forward to persuade it. "Submit to me, believe in me, and you shall receive a new life." The small skeleton responded with a vicious swipe of its claws, tearing. I sneered, "As long as the divine realm remains unshattered, his divine incarnation can exist for eternity. Continue the assault, strike it until it finally submits." I issued a divine decree. Slashing Sword Peak and the divine hammer strictly carried out the order. 3 days later, Slashing Sword Peak and the divine hammer brought a pile of dull, lusterless bones to the temple. A frail female voice echoed within my mind. "I am willing to submit to the deity." My divine incarnation appeared at the temple and, quite satisfied, patted the smooth skull of the little skeleton. The skeleton clan belongs to the ranks of the undead. What I found unbelievable was that this little skeleton before me was actually a Lord-class life form. If nurtured with care, perhaps this little skeleton could once again manifest the true majesty of a Lord-class being. Just as I was contemplating the little skeleton's glorious future, its prayers reached my mind once more. "Great deity, I am hungry." The little skeleton claimed to be hungry, but it certainly could not consume ordinary flesh and blood. After all, its ribcage was entirely hollow, lacking even the simplest digestive organs. To emphasize its plea, the little skeleton's prayer grew even clearer. I clapped my hands. If it wanted bones, why did it not say so sooner? I issued a divine decree for the swarm to bring a vast quantity of bones from the blood-flesh golems. The little skeleton rushed forward eagerly, clutching the bones and absorbing the skeletal energy contained within. It took a full minute to drain a femur longer than itself. As the bone turned brittle and withered, the little skeleton's own frame gained a hint of luster. I frowned. At this rate of consumption every few days, the little skeleton would be fundamentally unable to recover its previous level, let alone increase its overall strength. I immediately ordered a large quantity of blood-flesh golem bones to be placed into the refiner to extract pure bone essence crystals. Soon, a single bone essence crystal was delivered. The soul fire within the little skeleton's eye sockets danced wildly. If the bones it had just consumed were mere scraps, then this bone essence crystal was a grand imperial banquet. Seeing the precious gift bestowed by the deity, the little skeleton prayed with extreme fervor and impatience. I gave the order to grant the bone essence crystal to the little skeleton. Clutching the fist-sized bone essence crystal, the little skeleton absorbed it with all its might, and its bony frame rapidly regained its radiance. "Follow me, and there will be many more bone essence crystals for you to consume in the future," I declared. The soul fire in its eye sockets flared with excitement as it was instantly promoted from a common believer to a true devotee. Having settled the little skeleton, I noticed Slashing Sword Peak and the Divine Hammer watching the creature. Their eyes betrayed an undisguised sense of admiration. These two truly envied the little skeleton for having energy crystals to absorb. As a god, I must attend to the needs of every subordinate. With a wave of my hand, I went to the mall to purchase wind attribute and fire attribute ores. I spent 100 million divine power points to keep the decomposition machine running non-stop, producing wind and fire energy crystals. If my subordinates cannot use them all, I will simply sell the surplus. After all, there is no risk of loss. The remaining divine power will be reserved to purchase flesh and blood magic golems for the royal race. Having settled these matters, I noticed it was time for school. The next instant, my figure teleported directly into the classroom. A minute later, the homeroom teacher Diane Wen entered the class and announced, "Students, are you prepared to face a new challenge?" The students sat upright, listening intently as Diane Wen continued. "The general examinations have concluded. Once again, I congratulate those of you who remain. You are all elites, but this upcoming assessment is the true key that will widen the gap between you, and it may even determine which university will ultimately grant you admission." Upon hearing mention of university admissions, I narrowed my eyes. My grandfather's final wish was for me to go to the Sea of Chaos at the Imperial Academy to search for my missing parents. The Imperial Academy happens to be one of the premier institutions within the God Realm civilization. This assessment will be conducted on a cluster of miniature satellites controlled by the school. Relatively speaking, the danger level is low, but that does not mean it is non-existent. Next, you will all be teleported to the Abyss Plane. The specific details of the examination will be sent to your emails after your descent. Diane Wen scanned the room, then spoke with a sonorous voice. "You have 1 hour to prepare." As soon as those words fell, the classroom erupted into a frantic discussion regarding the Abyss Plane. It is said that the region is shrouded in demonic miasma year-round. Any subordinates who enter are highly likely to be corrupted by this energy, transforming into mindless demonic husks. No ordinary monster or undead soul can exist there normally. I've also heard that undead calamities frequently erupt there, with the dead ruthlessly attacking any living being they encounter. Who could possibly withstand such a place? Does anyone here have a demonic race as their subordinate? Please allow me to rely on your protection. When Zhang Xiaolong heard Diana Wen announce that the assessment would take place in the Abyss Plane, he could not conceal the joy on his face. Because his core subordinates were of the demonic race, he possessed an innate advantage. In a plane invasion assessment like this, a single step ahead ensures a lead at every subsequent turn. Zhang Xiaolong already foresaw his meteoric rise during this trial. When that time comes, the likes of President Bai or Shu Sun can simply step aside. The era of Zhang Xiaolong was finally arriving. Just as Zhang Xiaolong intended to find Qin Shuang to boast and extend a team invitation, a secret communication transmission arrived, the caller's identity displayed as unknown. Filled with suspicion, Zhang Xiaolong answered the call and Lu Luoxin's voice came through. "Xiaolong, it is I, Teacher Liu. Teacher, is there something you need from me?" Zhang Xiaolong asked in a low voice. "I need you to help me deal with someone." Lu Luoxin's voice was laced with profound hatred. "Is it President Bai?" "Even without your command, I was already planning to deal with him." Zhang Xiaolong understood the situation perfectly. He had heard a few days ago that because of him, Lu Luoxin had lost 5 points of divinity to Dian Wen during the general examination. Those 5 points of divinity were enough to nurture a low-level demigod. As expected of the student I value most, if you do this from far, I will ensure you are well compensated. Lu Luoxin spoke, then sent an email to Zhang Xiaolong. "This is the sponsorship I am providing. Accept it. It will be useful for your upcoming examination." Opening the email, Zhang Xiaolong found a sealing card containing a transcendent life form, the Demon Subdragon. The Transcendent Demon Subdragon. This was a powerful race capable of rivaling hero-tier life forms. Trembling with excitement, Zhang Xiaolong immediately released the Demon Subdragon into his divine realm. Meanwhile, his classmates were mostly contacting their families, gathering various artifacts to resist the encroachment of demonic qi, and seeking every possible way to increase their chances of survival. The blink of an eye, the hour of preparation had concluded. Under Dian Wen's guidance, the teleportation sequence began. The students were transported to the abyssal plane, scattered randomly across various regions of that realm. Upon descending into the plane, they received an email detailing the examination's objectives and requirements. Each participating student was granted one opportunity to descend via a follower's avatar. Should the avatar perish, the student would be forced to descend in their true form. If the true body perished, it meant true irreversible death. Participants could summon their followers once per day, with a limit of 100 per summon. These two conditions alone push the difficulty to a. The trial rankings are determined by the accumulation of mission points. Completing a task yields both points and their corresponding rewards. The mission list is as follows. Mission 1, exterminate the withered bone soldiers. Objective brief. Within the Exil Basin lies a massive encampment guarded by the Skeleton Clan. Eradicate at least 90% of the skeleton soldiers. Destroy the Skeleton Clan's war banner. Note: the number of skeleton soldiers within this camp ranges from 800 to 1,000. Their ranks range from ordinary undead at the lowest to transcendent undead at the highest. Mission rewards: 60 trial points, 1 random rank 1 sacred artifact. Looking at the list, I saw a dense array of nearly 500 missions. Some required the extermination of a specific race. Others involved the gathering of rare resources, and others demanded construction in specific locations. In short, the variety of tasks was exhaustive. Students may choose the path best suited to their expertise and accept relevant missions. The trial concludes once all missions are completed or the student personally intervenes in the assessment. Please select which subordinate incarnation you wish to descend as. A prompt echoed within my mind, urging me to make a selection. 4 distinct choices materialized before my eye. Observing these 4 options, I felt a surge of confidence that success was within reach. Option 1, Locust Incarnation. Option 2, Bare-Chested Dwarf. Option 3, Sword Peak Clan Incarnation. Option 4, Skeleton Lord Incarnation, weakened, crippled, and sealed. It appeared that these subordinate incarnations were derived from a tally of every race within my divine realm. I immediately discarded the Locust Incarnation. They are capable of nothing but self-destruction, and choosing them would be a death sentence. While the Bare-Chested Dwarf was vastly superior to the Locust, it paled in comparison to the Sword Peak Clan. I found myself torn between the Sword Peak Clan and the Skeleton Lord. Which should I choose? The Sword Peak Clan was undoubtedly a hero-rank lifeform with immense combat prowess, a truly terrifying existence capable of taking on 1,000 foes alone. However, option 4, the Skeleton Lord, was a Lord-rank entity. This was a tier above the hero rank, and furthermore, its attribute was of the undead. Such a nature would allow me to resist the corrosive demonic energy of the Abyssal Realm. Despite the 3 negative status effects severely hindering its strength, its overall potential still surpassed the Sword Peak Clan. After long deliberation, I made my decision and chose the Skeleton Lord Incarnation. In the following instant, my form shrank to a mere meter in height. My flesh withered away, leaving behind nothing but a skeleton as white as jade. At this moment, my form is indeed that of a small skeleton. I brush my hand against my smooth, bare skull, while the soul fire within my hollow eye sockets burns in silence. The demonic ki drifting through the air has no adverse effect on him. On the contrary, it makes him feel quite comfortable. It is true what they say, the demonic abyss is a paradise for the undead and demonic creatures. I mused to myself, and after finalizing my choice of incarnation, I began to summon my subordinates. The examination rules dictate that a student may only summon subordinates once per day, with a limit of 100 per summon. Thus, I summoned 100 gluttonous locusts, which are classified as elite lifeforms. Upon being transported to the demonic abyss, these 100 gluttonous locusts were immediately subjected to the erosion of demonic ki. In less than an hour, 94 of the gluttonous locusts had perished. Of the remaining 6, 3 were on the verge of death, while the other 3 were tainted by the demonic chi, mutating into demonic locusts. I had already anticipated this outcome. To living beings, demonic ki is like a deadly poison. To avoid being eroded to death, transforming into a demonic creature is the best choice. However, once a creature undergoes demonic transformation, they typically lose all reason and become extremely violent. But for the gluttonous locusts, this side effect is irrelevant. Since they possess no intellect to begin with, even after being demonized, they still obey the commands of their mysterious deity, me. Once the 3 locusts completed their mutation, I officially began my scouting journey. By observing the surroundings and consulting the map provided in the exam details, he determined his current location. Opening the quest list, I quickly selected the tasks available in this vicinity. Quest 49, collect 100 ancient demonic fruits, reward 20 examination points. Quest 280, out the demonic parasites, reward 60 examination points and a random tier 1 sacred relic. Quest 423, mine 100 blocks of demonic ore, reward 50 examination points and a random set of faith equipment. Among these 3 tasks, gathering the ancient demonic fruits was the simplest. I decided to handle the easiest objective first. Following the map's guidance, I led the 3 demonic locusts toward a pitch-black forest. The fruits with black rinds and skull-like patterns hanging from the dark trees were the ancient demonic fruits mentioned in the quest. As I currently am a skeleton, it is inconvenient for me to climb trees, so I had the 3 demonic locusts harvest the fruit for me. Compared to ordinary locusts, the demonic locusts possessed much sharper serrated mandibles. They moved with great speed and soon harvested 100 ancient demonic fruits. I piled them together and sealed them into a card, preparing to submit the quest. Suddenly, low growls echoed from beneath the earth. I looked down and saw corpses crawling out from the soil. Some were in a state of severe decomposition, while others were mere withered skeletons or possessed only remnants of rotting flesh. Their entire bodies were shrouded in a foul green miasma. Fortunately, in my Skeleton Lord incarnation, I have no nose. Otherwise, the stench of these putrid beings would have surely suffocated me. These mindless, rotting husks possessed nothing but a primal instinct to kill, slowly shuffling toward me. I was eager to test the true strength of this skeletal incarnation. With a swift stride, I raised my skeletal claws and lunged forward, piercing clean through the chest of one of the rotting creatures. As an undead entity, even having its heart torn out meant nothing to the creature. It still possessed the strength to swing its arms in a desperate attempt to retaliate. I would not grant such a lowly creature its wish. With a single swipe of my claws, I decapitated it, and only then did it finally collapse. Repeating the process, I easily dispatched 20 of these crawling abominations before a moment of silence finally returned. To think that earning a mere 20 evaluation points would be this troublesome. If this is the case, how difficult must the 100-point missions be? I sealed the ancient demon fruits into a card, completed the mission to receive my accumulated points, and scoured the mission list until I discovered a task worth a staggering 1,000 evaluation points. Mission 500. Slay the Dark Toadman Demigod. The rewards included 1,000 evaluation points, 1 point of divinity, and 1,000 class credits. Another demigod hunt. Too dangerous, far too dangerous. It is better to remain prudent and focus on gathering points through safer means. I admit defeat for now. Even the weakest demigod possesses 5 points of divinity and commands a following of at least 10,000 believers. It is not an existence I can provoke, especially when I currently only possess 3 demonized locusts. Closing the mission list, I saw my 3 demonized locusts feasting upon the remains of the rotting corpses. A wave of nausea washed over me, despite the fact that in this form I no longer even possessed a stomach. Looking back at the forest, many ancient demon fruits still hung from the blackened trees. An idea struck me. I immediately commanded the demonized locusts to harvest every single ancient demon fruit within the woods. The 3 demonized locusts were forced to abandon their meal and dedicate themselves to the task I had assigned. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed, and every ancient demon fruit in the forest was now in my possession. For every 100 fruits, I sealed them into a single card, ultimately yielding a total of 40 cards. From another perspective, this represented 800 potential evaluation points. Mission 4 is a repeatable task that every student can complete once. While I cannot submit more myself, my fellow classmates would surely trade valuable resources to secure 20 easy evaluation points. I was certain they would be more than willing. With that thought, I opened the communication interface and accessed the class group chat. Is anyone looking to purchase the 100 ancient? Bartering is also acceptable. A single sentence plunged the entire group into a deathly silence. After waiting 10 seconds without a warning from head teacher Dianwen, the atmosphere instantly erupted. Is such a strategy even allowed? Is this not cheating? You call this cheating? What do you fools know? This is called resource integration. President Bai, I want a portion of the ancient demon fruit. I will pay 50 units of divine power. I want a portion as well. I offer 50 divine power. Only resources obtained within this plane may be used for the trade. Cease this at once. This is your first warning. Accumulating 3 warnings will result in disqualification from the examination. Head teacher Dianwen finally issued a response, making the group even more boisterous. Numerous classmates initiated trades with me, and I replied to them one by one. Staring intently at the communication interface, Zhang Xiaolong in his Yaolong demon incarnation let out a cold sneer. I was just wondering how I would find you, yet you dared to reveal your own location. This time I shall see how you meet your end. Having said that, Zhang Xiaolong charged in my direction. A hellhound followed closely at Zhang Xiaolong's heels.